So I see in the chat, yes, yeah. I think everybody's an A. Nobody's responding, so it's a sure sign people are an A. Indeed, so much. This will be a good video for some post AP material, and you'll be able to showcase coding rooms a little, but you may want to look for one of the videos that John has done before. I think we already have those posted. I'm sure Joe can help you find those to show all the features, all the things that Coding Rooms has to offer. Since this will really focus on some ideas for, even if you're not teaching AP, just some end of year ideas for if you're teaching a Java course. So I'm going to put in the chat the join code for the Coding Rooms section we'll be working on. So most of this is going to be on using Swing Gui, so event-driven buttons, text fields, pictures, sounds. So more interactive than especially AP students have probably seen, unless they've had a prior programming course. So most of that is my intent for the session, for you to actually be able to practice using some of it and see what we have there. But I also have some other smaller post AP ideas. So if you join, click the link and join if you aren't already. You can use one of the auto login features. If I click here, do you see my Coding Rooms now, or are you still seeing the slides?
We see the Coding Rooms.
You do, okay. So I'm not sure how many of you are new. Your screen will look a little bit different than mine, but you should have access to all these other all the other sections we've done for prior webinars. Tonight, we're going to be on this on 13, the post AP portion. So any of you that have come to the last few webinars, I had a quiz at the beginning just to dig into some prior knowledge. This one doesn't. So what I have here is I have a Swing graphics folder for you, a folder on ethics with a short ethics assignment you could use, a folder on a couple of the nifty assignments if you've not seen those in some of the groups going about, and then a student follow along guide if you have the War Games movie and are interested in trying to show a movie. It's one of the good computing movies. So we're going to be in this Swing graphics section here. And for me, I'm coming from, this is something I would use with my AP students. It would be post AP. And I know some of them still have AP exams this week. They might have other state exams coming up. And so this was something that I could give them and they could work on at their own pace over a couple of weeks. So all the things in the graphics that are here is enough for a couple of weeks. And I taught on a block schedule with the 90 minutes every other day. Some students, as usual, need a little bit more time than others. So the GUI reference document has a lot of information about all the components and the layout and how they're going to be laying out the screen. And this is something that they can come back to. So a lot of students are really good at searching online for things, but I would say the majority of what they need, certainly for the first couple of projects that I have here, the answer to it is in here somewhere. It may not be, you know, explicitly that example, but everything is here. So this is a little bit long, this section. And the first day, so I'm going back to the top, the first day I would really have the students just getting used to this document on day one. So at the beginning, there's a program here, main program, and there's a program that has the panel, and the panel is going to have, this program is where they're going to be doing the majority of their work. So there's some discussion on these pages about what the main is, what the panel is, but I think we'll just run this. So you should be able to run it as well. If you're in the assignment, you should practice doing that. And for these, you need to click the open desktop. And then you can also click to expand here. On some of the projects later where there's some audio added, you would want to turn the audio on before you did that. But this one doesn't have any audio. So you can expand that window and you can see the little pop-up. Now it's in the upper left-hand corner, and it's a little difficult to see with the coloring, but there's an outside frame that the main program is creating. And then the inside is where the panel information is going to be. And all that's in that panel right now is a label that says my first label, and that's just text that they can put to the screen. So you can do the upper right-hand corner to minimize that. So underneath this first interactive window, each of the programs has some things that are noteworthy, in that if you were going to, both of these you could download and put on any other IDE and they would work fine as long as you have access to Java. So it has some notes about the imports that you need here for main. The biggest thing, main is really not where the students will be working. Main does give the title of that outside frame, which is somewhat, you know, it's not super interesting or noteworthy, but that is where the title of the frame is put. It also sets the size for the GUI interactive pane window. And you can set the location. So I have this commented out, and that's why it went in the upper left-hand corner, because it defaults to 0, 0. And I'm going to assume you know a little bit about coordinates on GUI from maybe the picture lab or some other things, but you can also, this 200, 200, we put it more in the middle of the page, so we could remove that comment and run it again. It was still running, actually. That's one thing with GUI, they run forever, somewhat. So here you can see now you can even see it in this little window. So this would be XY coordinate 200, 200. So the upper left-hand corner of that window can be set. And then probably the most important thing with main is that it connects to the panel program that you're going to be using. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. So this is sending the content pane, and you can see here this syntax is, you know, creating an object, and the type of object it's creating is this panel 00 object, and that it actually comes from this panel 00 class that's here. So when I did this before coding rooms, probably a majority of the time was spent on making sure they had this name match, has to match the file name, has to match the class name, and then this class is an object template, and so the constructor name needs to match as well. So luckily here, all the projects are already embedded. You have the main and you have the panel, and they should all be correct. If not, you can let me know where they match up already. But when students, if you've worked with students on outside of coding rooms or outside of any other, you know, contained system, the file management can get difficult for students for this, making sure their names are matching up and making sure when they have a main that they're, you know, attaching it to the panel that they want to be seeing for that program. So if you have a different environment that you're ever working in, just keep that in mind, that often they'll work in this panel. They've been working here for, you know, 20 minutes, half an hour, hours, and they keep running and they're not seeing the changes. And sometimes it's because those names aren't matching up. So this has a little bit of inheritance. You can see this panel is extending the J panel class. We are using for these labs Swing graphics, and Java FX is a more current GUI manager. It works differently though, and I have had these labs for years, and it's a good intro for an event-driven GUI. So this is inheriting some things already from this J panel class that we'll be using. And basically what you're doing with the constructor is you're initializing all the components and all the things that you want to go on that inside screen. So your private variables are going to be all these different components, all these different pieces. And in the constructor, you're going to initialize them. You're going to add them to the panel. You have to say where you want to add them. The panel itself, that inside of the GUI window, can have different types of layouts. The projects that I'm working with, or that I have here that I added, use 3 different layouts at different times. There's a border layout, there's a flow layout, and there's a grid layout that students can use, that you can use for the panel. And depending on which of those layouts you use, when you add things to that window, they get added in certain ways in certain places. So again, the first day, normally they would type in this program and play with it a little bit. So this could certainly be, they could certainly use this area to try and add some other components. So all the components, I think all, the sound actually starts with audio clip, but a lot of the components starts with this capital J. So there's J label for just a label, a text on there's J button when you want a button that's clickable, that will perform some sort of action when you click it. There's text fields where you can type in their J text fields. And then that might be, there are some other, you can make check boxes and radio buttons. So you can have your students look for more. The ones that I have on this page are the ones that the projects that I have here use. So for this example, here's a component that we're going to add to the panel. It's the label. So there's that private variable. This sets the layout for that main panel that we're talking about. This initializes the label. It just gives it some text. And then this will add it to the panel. So I don't have it in a lot of these programs, but I do have it on this page, on this page. Whenever you see a method inside this constructor that's being called, it's as if it's on this panel being the main panel. And that will be important because later you can have sub panels within other panels so that you can get more design elements. And so when you do that, you're going to be creating J panels to put inside this panel. And so those panels will have names, and you want to use those names when you want to set their layout. So if you introduce this to your students, these GUI projects are a great place to reinforce it. Again, this being the main panel. So with flow layout, if the panel's flow layout, anything you add gets added one at a time in the order that you add them. And Java is going to do its best to lay it out on the screen. So we could make 5 more labels here, label 2, label 3, label 4, label 5. We could give them different text, and we could add them all to the panel, and it's just going to feed them in a flow. You can think of it as a flow. There's also border layout that a lot of the projects used, and this is a good image of the border layout. These are actually, see where it says border layout.north. These are actually the code you use when you add something to a panel that has border layout. You would tell it to add it to border layout.north, or you would tell it to add it to border layer.south. So it's one of the parameters that gets passed to the method. Now with border layout though, you can only put one thing in each. You only put one thing in the north, one thing in the west. Whereas flow layout, you can just keep flowing things in, but they're not quite organized. The one that I use the least, but it's probably the most helpful and powerful for later, is grid layout, where you can really set it up in a modular 2D array type of way and put things in the grid and lay it out that way. So those are the layout types for the panel. So you say what type of layout you want, and then you're going to add things to it. So again, the first day, I just have them read through this and try some things. So this is talking about how to add things with different types of layouts. You could come up here and change the type of layout to border layout. And then you could practice when you, oh, I don't want to do this. Let me do this. I'll go live. I don't think it will save it now, right? So if I go to the panel. So we're not going to see a lot if I just do border layout. But now when I add, I'm adding to a panel that's using border layout. So now I can have a comma and specify. And this is all in the words underneath. It's all there. The students don't always think it's there. And myself included, it's getting harder and harder to read things. We're used to videos and things happening fast. So you can already see that the label kind of went to the left instead of flow, it centered it. So one of the things with GUI, sometimes things are a little weird or they don't do what you think they're going to do. So playing around with it, but reminding students to keep moving forward, because you can get really bogged down in the formatting. So there's ways they can add colors to the text and colors behind the text. But let's go ahead and add another label here. So here where I initialize, we'll initialize another label here. And next, we have to make sure we add it. So there's a lot of steps for each one of these components. You declare it, initialize it, anything you want to do with formatting, and then don't forget to add it to some panel that you have. So this one, I'll add it to the south. And so we should see it. On the bottom of that screen. And there you can see it at the bottom there. So there are ways that you can center it in the south. You can increase the font. And like I said, you can add colors. There's other things. And so that first day for students just exploring, continuing to add things. create different types of components and add them to their screen. And let's see, is there something else? So I'm curious if I add this to the north. So what I had said before was it would kind of replace it. So let's see. So this is a good time again to tinker that first day. Let's see. So you see, we lost the first message, we got the second. So where you put them with border layout, it's going to go over top. Whereas I could change this to flow layout. And I don't even think these are errors. I think it just ignores them. But now we're going to see both messages because flow layout flows each label in one at a time, and it'll keep flowing, I guess, till it fills up the window. You can just see them back to back there. So one label right after the other. Let's see, I didn't mean to do that. So why don't you take at least 10 minutes, maybe more, and go down, and I wouldn't do the colors right now. I would suggest try making something else. I wouldn't do the formatting either. Like I said, that is just something you have to keep tinkering with and can take a lot of time. But try adding a button. So make a J button the same way the label was made. And then there's the code here that you might want to put in the constructor and adding it. And run and see if you can put a button. And it's up to you if you want to leave it flow layout or if you want to tinker with the border layout. And if you get a button added, see if you can then add a text field, a J text field, just to see it on the screen. It's not going to do anything yet. The button's not going to do anything yet, but see if you can start adding some of these components to the screen and getting used to all the steps you need to do. So, and if there's something you'd like to see me do, put it in the chat, because I'm happy to keep going through if you're really pooped and you'd rather just watch. But especially with GUI, I think getting some of that muscle memory of giving it a try on your own. So let's do that. We'll come back together at 8:40 unless I have some questions. Okay, so in the chat, did you just relax and watch me? Did you try something? Share with me where you're at with that. Excellent. So why don't we, so again, this is the reference. So when I do this with students, again, some are out for APs and it's just a crazy time of year with a lot of end of year events. So this is something I would give them and kind of have them work at their own pace. If you look under the teachers only section, there's a planning and grading document. It gives you the timeline for this for 2 weeks. It's give or take, again, some students will work faster than others, as you know, and some have other things going on. So I would just feel, my goal at this time of the year with students was to let them have some fun, let them learn something new, and keep them working. So you can decide whether to scaffold more, back off more. But again, that first day, it would just be playing like you saw me do, adding the colors and other things. The second day, it's really, I really push from the minute we get in the class. You want to get a button working. So you saw in mine, I was clicking the button and nothing happened. So to get a button to work, you attach it to a listener, which is the section of code that executes when the button's clicked. It's also a text field. When you type in text and hit enter or click a button, you can attach things to other things to listeners like that. I think most of these are all, I don't think we're using the enter button at all on any of these. So it's gonna be, everything is button driven. They click a button and something happens. And so putting that code in there. So getting a simple button to work on day 2, and then it's just working through the projects. I noted down here there's groups of projects. This is how I grouped it in the past. The first one is just that formatting and getting a button to work, and getting, when you click a button, to have an actual JPEG or PNG file show up on the button, sort of as a response to whatever was on the button. So there's 2 programs that use those type of skills. When you get into using sub panels within the main panel and using a text field, a JText field, actually reading in the text and doing something with it, that's the calculator project. And then for the third grouping, they add sound, and this last one has animation, but all 3 of these add some sound effects. So this is a rubric I used last year. I've used other ways of grading it. This is, if it helps you, great. But just wanted you to have this if you needed it. And I will change these timelines. I'm going to look back and see if I can get a better feel. But I feel like I've always left about 2 weeks for this. And then, maybe it's due after the 2 weeks, but no more class time. So I have answer keys for some of the programs here. So this is full working code here for you to look at. I only have it right now for 4 of the projects, 4 of the 6 projects. But there's 1 from each of those sections, at least 1. So these keys have some notes for you about just general notes about that project on the teacher side of it, and also the common errors I see students have for those particular. So this would be the first one, either this guess who that someone was just mentioning, or there's a gallery where they click buttons and pictures just come up. So with this one, the questions on the outside they come up with and they put them on the buttons. And when you click the buttons, it gives an answer. And the person's trying to guess whose picture is in the center. And so you click on the outside, and this one is Ada Lovelace. So finding an image, resizing an image, but it's basically just buttons and listeners, putting buttons on a screen, playing with formatting, and then having something happen when you click the button. So now when I click, nothing happens. It's not, super extreme. And whether you followed along earlier or tried to do it on your own, there's a lot of objects, right? And this solution panel, you can see I've got all these buttons. The icon is for the picture, all these initializing, all the formatting I'm doing, but you'd be surprised. Students really, every year, even at this time of year, and I don't know, I know this year is different than past years, but this just makes them come alive. They get excited about it. They enjoy seeing something if they haven't done some visual programming before. And it's not as complex and scary as it looks. It's kind of a do one button, get it working, and then do the rest. So there's a calculator program again, where they enter values, and it does some calculations, addition, subtraction. That requires changing from string to double and back. And then the ones that add sound. So this is a radio program I made that has sound files, wave files. So with some of these, with the pictures and the wave files, that's actually ends up being a bulk of their time. It's not so much the coding. They do that pretty quickly, but so the answer keys are there for you. And then the projects are here. So this would be what you would provide for the student. And like I said before, the nice part is the main's already set up, the panel's set up with hopefully all the imports they need. I tried to double check, but. Do you have any questions about anything in the Swing graphics? Yay, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I hope they enjoy it. And I know there's that tendency, that teacher in us, to push them to the end, and that is good. But I think this is really a great opportunity for them to have some fun and use some of their skills and see this inheritance going on. And you may not know what's in JPanel or why we care, but you're seeing, things that we've used throughout the year. Yay. So if they really like the graphics and you have students who get super advanced, under the Nifty assignments, there's 2 here that I've put. I might just leave these 2. I would say these are more for advanced students. And the only reason is because the specs for them are college level, very wordy. You really have to pick through. But the Falling Sand Lab, I've actually offered this in the 2D arrays unit because it does use some of the 2D array concepts. But it has them advancing, the water, and then the yellow is the sand, and the water doesn't dissolve the sand, and there's this gray metal that they put. So when you run it right now, what's here for the students, nothing is happening yet. So they're going to actually code that these change colors and what happens. And water moves, but metal doesn't, and that kind of thing. So that one's a popular one. And then I've let students go on and do their own creative elements with it. And they'll do things like Mountain Dew, they'll make their own buttons and it's dropping Mountain Dew or something else. And so, so that's there. Under information, there's a link to all the nifty assignments. They are pretty cool, but I think a lot of them are a little more advanced if these are just first year students for you. The other is the Wordle that I think has been coming in a lot of the groups. I've been seeing it in the CS Awesome chat. And so I pulled all the files into here. So it already runs right now the same way it would if they downloaded the code for themselves. But nothing works yet, right? So, I mean, this part works, but it's not going to do none of the buttons are triggering like they're supposed to. So I have the links to the specs. There's a link that they had provided where they could play the game. So those I see as more advanced. If you have more advanced students, those might be some projects you want to work on. If it would be helpful for me to do an answer key for those, I could. I think I have the Falling Sand somewhere, but the Wordle is a newer one, but you can let us know if that would be helpful. And then I have ethics and war games movie. So the ethics is a 1 to 2 day. It might be a 1 day in class, and then, if you're giving homework and then the war games movie I was able to watch. So in the ethics section, it has them follow some links and respond to some prompts. If you've not done ethics, I know it's in the CS Awesome coursework somewhere. And I think the first year I taught AP, I did ethics, but then I learned to wait because it's not so much testable and there's so much material for the AP exam that I wanted to get through. But I think it's really worthwhile, especially now, and how much technology is growing and how the laws and regulations are not able to keep up. And so I think it's important for them to be thinking about their code and what are the laws around the code. And there are these codes of ethics and computing from these organizations. So that I would think would be a day. It could be a partner activity or something, but that's there. It's got all the points assigned. You would have to manually grade it. I don't think I've ever graded it that harshly. I just think it's worthwhile it really deserves more than a day. I know that, but there's at least a day there. And then the War Games movie, I bought mine on my own and showed it. And I kept looking for other movies and I kept coming back to it. It's really a fun movie. It's a good 80s movie, old school electronics and things. And there's a high school student, so Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy's in it. And so I put some notes here about the timing. You do have to cut some of the movie out if you have a 90-minute block and you're trying to do it in one block. But that is there. So just some ideas for end of the year. To go back to the swing graphics, for one of them at the end, one of the projects that they do towards the end, if you make it to radio matching animation, those they really have a lot of creativity, chance to be really creative because they can decide what they want their matching game to be or what songs they share on their radio. And so it's really fun to do sort of a gallery walk with those, or at least I would go around and I might grade them manually so I could see what they had. But just keep that in mind. If you're able to make it to that project 3 grouping, those give them the best opportunity for some creative design. So do you all have any questions? Is there anything else we can help you with? So let me know if the nifty solutions would be helpful. And it's about 9 o'clock, so we do want to let you go. We have been keeping this open from 9 to 9:30 if someone has something they'd like to talk about or ask questions about. I'm also willing, and I might do it anyway since we're recording, to set up a listener for the button to show you how the listener gets set up for a button so that something happens. So it's on the recording. But other than that,
That sounds great. So it'd be great if you want to stick around and check that out. Feel free. I wanted to mention that I threw the link in for the Coding Rooms Marketplace, where we've been sharing free resources and the community has been sharing free resources. All the materials Eva provided in a format that is easily, you can make a copy and deliver right to students. Will be available on that marketplace later tonight, but most definitely this tomorrow morning. So you can click on that link. Maybe we'll just pause for a minute, Eva, see if there are any questions, and then Eva's going to move on to show us a little bit more to kind of close out our session. So please let us know if there are any questions. If you think you have everything you need, feel free to go. If not, we're going to show a little more.
so if you're in the middle of typing a message, keep typing it, just type it or a question. I'm gonna go ahead and do a listener. Oh, good. So I know Joe can help with that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I am basically the only person using coding rooms in my district. So I went to a meeting and one of the main topics was what they're all using. And then they also have Replit, which I tried out with my class, and it just wasn't, my class completely preferred coding rooms, and I showed them the coding room setup. I pulled up some of my labs and I did all that. So my district is kind of evaluating what they're planning on using next year or in the future. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. So fill out, you can either just talk to sales if you want to quote, you want to have your district get a full demo. You can fill that out, just go to codingrooms.com and they'll get all that information. We do fully customized pricing depending on number of students, number of teachers, all those kind of things. So the sales team will collect that information and then get your quote.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A meeting, and it was in person, and we were talking about the different platforms people had been using, which I had tried out, and in between issues with just in between stuff, I landed on coding rooms They loved coding rooms. I like coding rooms. And then when I showed it to my district computer science people, they were like, oh, this is neat. How much, what is this? So I will forward that information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's resistance to do something new, but I think there's so many benefits to this. And one of them that you might, on the teacher side, and I think there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of ways to disseminate code and things, but this one for the teacher organization side, there's nothing compares. And in the CS area, even in Fairfax County, we're a pretty popular county, but the turnover on computer science teachers, and so having something like this in place for a new teacher would be very helpful.
Yeah,
so you could push that element with the powers that be,
with the almighty in the universe. Yeah, no, I'm a fan, and I agree that the pushback to what people are accustomed to, because what they're using is it's basically a form of JGrass. Not gonna lie, I love JGrass. If I'm gonna run on my board, the visual on JGrass, I like it, but the web platform, and I love coding rooms, they can do it from anywhere. I can put in a comment. I can run their code and I can say, hey, put in a comment and send them a little message to tell them what to look at at any time. So I'm a fan. Just wanted to check in on that. Thank you so much. I'm gonna log out, you guys. Thank you.
Sounds good. Yeah, the built-in practice too, the embedded practice, I think.
Oh
is
yeah,
huge. The auto grading.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good luck.
As I mentioned, I'm on the free version. Like, I'm uploading my own stuff, so I sign up for these things because it's like it's a good access to resources, and also it's my first year teaching CSA. So
congratulations, you made it.
And so I made it through my first year of CSA. I feel real good about their exam, and Loudoun County is adding CSP. So guess who gets that next year? So I'm like, oh, I'm finally comfortable. Nope.
Yeah.
So, but that's okay. It's wonderful. But I will touch base with sales, or at least pass that information. Thanks for all the resources and everything. I'm going to log out. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
So let's see, for sake of the video, oh, did I lose all my work because I went to a different page? I did. Okay, that's okay. So we're going to make the day 2 would be for students to make a button and make it work, make the button work. So we use the J button, we give that object a name, following this kind of format. We initialize it, I'm guessing. That's it. And then after we initialize our button, I'll check the syntax at the bottom. We want to add it to our panel. What do I want to add? Button 1. So in one of the teacher comments, I mentioned this is where I'm adding it. In this case, it's this. That's the name of the subpanel, or the panel where I'm adding it. And then what I want to add is the argument being passed. So this is also a good, missing a semicolon, is that it? This is also a good unit to really push do a little test, do a little test, do a little test, because these, so, all right, so we have our clickable button, but nothing's happening. For something to happen, we need a listener, and the listener's gonna listen for an event. An event is like clicking the button. So I'm gonna go down here and go find listener. And here it is. So for most of these, we're just attaching buttons, listeners to buttons. And to keep it simple in all these projects, every button has its own listener. It's just an easier way to handle it when you're a beginner. So with the listener, you need to make sure you import. There's another import at the top that's probably not on my panel at the top. And then we're going to add the listener to the button. We connect the listener to the button. And then the actual code for the listener is going to go in the panel class, but outside of the constructor. So it's really, it's kind of weird because we've not seen a lot of embedded classes within another class. So I'm going to copy all this to put at the top. We'll go to my panel, and I'm just going to go outside the bottom and paste it all on the bottom, and then just move it where I need to move it. So I need to make sure this import is on the top. Ooh. Or my listener won't work. Then this is where we add a listener to a button. So I could do that as part of maybe formatting. So my button was not named N button. My button was button 1. And this is going to be the name of the listener class. So that you can name whatever you want. And there's definitely other ways to code this. This is just, so this listener, and this is a part that, so here is the end of the constructor for the panel. And here is the end of the entire class. And we want to go in between those two. And that's where we're going to put all the listeners, any listeners that we make, go in between those two. So I gave it a new name, my first listener. So this class name needs to match. We have to implement the action listener, and we want to have this action perform method. So all this stays the same, but the name of the listener, you can change. So each button can have its own named listener. And then you attach it, you connect it to the button itself. So when I click that button, what do I want to happen? So I have a button that says click me. So why don't we change the text to say you did it, you click the button. So I'm going to change the text on the button. So that means I'm going to want to use this variable. So inside this method is where I'm going to put. So I'm going to change the text of that button to say, you did it. And we'll just see if that, what we got. I have some errors. Well, we've got code, we've got something, got a button, we click it, and it says you did it. Now, if I keep clicking it, nothing happens. So you can certainly add in the listener. You can play with toggles. You a lot of the other projects, they're going to be adding if else in there to do things conditionally. We could make a J text field where they type text, and when they click the button, you're going to get the text out of that text field and do something with it. So with the GUI, just really slowing it down as usual with what are the steps? What do I need to do? What do I want to happen? What component does it affect? What do I actually want to do with it? So you can set the text of a button, you can set the text of a label, So I could have chosen to change label 1 here instead to say you did it, not the button. So, but I think that's the first couple of days, and then they should be able to fumble through the first couple projects. So now it changes that label instead. So good luck, and as I always say, happy coding.